Europa League winning boss Ange Postecoglou sacked on Friday by Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. 3 coaches have also gone out the door, but 2 coaches will remain at Spurs for next season. Many reports are stating that Scott Munn has also been sacked by Spurs, and it has just been confirmed Sunday morning that Robert Villaham, the Spurs women manager, has been relieved of his duties also. Thomas Frank is constantly being linked with the Tottenham Hotspur job, and many reports are stating that he wants the job, but Spurs are yet to talk to Brentford about the compensation package of between 9 and 10 million pounds. Former Tottenham Hotspur boss Mauricio Pochettino has been asked about the Spurs job, and he said it is unrealistic. Marco Silva is being linked with the Spurs job, and Record in Portugal are stating that a deal is close, and Ben Davies will be a Spurs player for another year. Hi everyone, hope you're well. Chris Cowlin here, and this is another episode of Tottenham News, where I'll be going through all of the latest Spurs news, rumours and reports. If you're watching on YouTube, please do hit the subscribe button, like, share and comment below. And if you're listening to this on an audio platform, please do hit the follow button and leave a review if you can. So where do I start? There is so much to go through since Friday's announcement from Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, when Spurs announced, following a review of performances and after significant reflection, the club can announce that Ange Postecoglou has been relieved of his duties. Well, the time of recording this Sunday afternoon, Tottenham Hotspur Football Club have put out another club statement confirming that women's first team head coach Robert Villaham has left the club, having joined us in July 2023 following a spell in charge of Swedish club BK Häcken. Robert Villaham guided us to a 6th place finish in the Barclays Women's Super League, while we also reached the FA Cup final for the first time in our history in May 2024. Robert departs having finished 11th in the Women's Super League following the conclusion of the 24-25 season. Andy Rodgers, Managing Director of the Tottenham Hotspur Women, said there have been some special moments during Robert's tenure at Spurs, including reaching the FA Cup final for the first time. However, results and performances this season have not been to the level that we would expect, and now is the right time to make a change. We should like to thank Robert for his professionalism and efforts over the past 2 seasons, and we wish him well for the future. And then Tottenham then go on to say a further coaching update for the women's first team will follow in due course. Now, the Daily Telegraph have stated that Mile Jedinak, Nick Montgomery and Sergio Raimondo have also left Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, and coach Matt Wells and goalkeeping coach Rob Birch are staying at the club. Now, the Sun newspaper have also stated that football officer Scott Munn has also been shown the door at Spurs, but no official announcement from the football club as yet. Now, on the Thomas Frank situation, and I'm not going to go through every single report in the last 48 hours. There are too many to go through, but there are a lot of media reports about Thomas Frank possibly joining Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. There have been lots of reports also about Marco Silva is on Tottenham's list, and Fabrizio Romano has stated that as well. Fabrizio Romano, the Italian journalist, he has stated that Tottenham are aware of Thomas Frank's position. He wants the job at Spurs. He is keen on becoming the new Spurs head coach. Sky Sports have also reported that if Spurs want Thomas Frank, they will have to pay Brentford a compensation package of around 9 to 10 million pounds. And the Sun newspaper have just reported there hasn't been any official approach yet from Spurs to Brentford about Thomas Frank. The Daily Mail have been extremely complimentary about Thomas Frank and a possible appointment at Spurs. They have written a report stating Frank would be perfect for Spurs. Brentford are no longer a smaller club and Spurs would be a step up, but it would not be a leap. Frank has a talent for building a successful culture and improving it one step after another. He is a clever manager and he led Brentford to a 10th place finish in the Premier League with the second lowest wage bill in the top flight. The Daily Mail then go on to say he has created an environment where his players, signed for their character as well as their ability, feel valued and generally achieve far in excess of what is expected of them. Thomas Frank's Brentford sides operate on a high-pressing, high-energy model, but when they attack, they do with speed and fluidity. Frank was especially proud that 3 of his players scored more than 10 league goals last season. It is surprising that Thomas Frank has not coached at Champions League level already. Spurs have work to do to repair the damage done by Postecoglou's departure, and the Daily Mail then go on to say that Thomas Frank deserves the chance to be the man to do it. Now, USA boss and former Tottenham Hotspur favourite Mauricio Pochettino has spoken out about the Tottenham job. He was asked by journalists about would he like to go back to Tottenham. Is it possible that he could be the next Spurs boss? He said, I think since I left in 2019, my name has already been on the list of rumours. I've seen the rumours. 100 coaches is on the list. Don't be worried about that. If something happens, you will know and you will see. But you cannot talk about this type of thing now. Today, it is not realistic. Look at where I am. Look at where we are. The answer is so clear. Now, Record in Portugal have stated that Marco Silva is very close to taking over as Tottenham Hotspur manager. An agreement between the parties is very close to being finalised, and everything leads us to believe that the Portuguese boss will succeed Ange Postecoglou at Spurs. With a contract valid until 2026 at Fulham, Marco Silva will continue his career in the same city, London, in the 2025-2026 campaign. He will have the additional challenge of managing Spurs in the Champions League. On Sunday morning, Tottenham Hotspur Football Club announced the following. We are delighted to say that we have exercised the option to extend Ben Davies' contract that will now run until the summer of 2026. Now, our longest-serving senior player, Ben Davies, joined us from Swansea City in the summer of 2014 and has been a constant, reliable presence in our squad ever since. He's currently up to 358 appearances in all competitions, level with Darren Anderton, making him one of only 29 players in history to have played 350 or more games for us. With 73 games under his belt in Europe, he's just 3 off the record for the highest number of European appearances in our history. Over the course of his 11 years here to date, Ben Davies has scored 9 goals and led the team out as captain on 13 occasions. On the international stage, the defender is rapidly approaching 100 senior caps for Wales, and he has represented his country at Euro 16, Euro 2020 and the 2022 FIFA World Cup. So, my thoughts on everything in this episode, and I tell you what, this episode could have easily have been a couple of hours because there are so many reports, so many news stories, rumours, etc. to go through. I've covered a lot of them in the 60-second update, so do check those out, and I've no doubt that they will be coming out on a regular basis, certainly in the next couple of days until Spurs appoint a manager, at least. So, since the sacking of Ange Postecoglou on Friday, it has been absolutely crazy, in my opinion. So many media reports out, as I've said. Did I agree with the sacking of Ange Postecoglou? I think you all know my thoughts on that. I don't agree with the sacking of Ange Postecoglou. I would have liked to have seen season 3. I know, it is split, a lot of the fan base, I believe the majority of the fan base, particularly when you look online and particularly when we talk to people and particularly when we do the fan shows and we have a number of Spurs fans all around the world on here, I believe the majority of fans wanted to keep Ange Postecoglou. I know that the minority can shout the loudest, and when I put something on this channel and on audio platforms, some of the abuse sometimes because some people don't agree with an opinion, and that's not called for. When people are being abusive and they're being personal and making personal remarks, that's not called for. I'm here to talk about Spurs. We're not here to be abused just because you don't agree with an opinion. I respect everyone's opinion, by the way. When someone comes on a fan show and says, Chris, I disagree with you, and, I think X, Y, and Z, completely respect everyone's opinion. And I didn't like those 22 league defeats anyway, but I tried to see the bigger picture of what has been achieved and what I can see happening and changing. And I feel like Ange Postecoglou was really trying hard to change, and I feel like he changed it a little bit. The mentality at the football club, not only the fan base, but the club within. I felt like, and I still do feel like, the club needs to change a lot internally, and I feel like Ange Postecoglou was slowly chipping away at trying to change that. The mentality side of things. I think Ange Postecoglou is actually a very, very clever man in the fact that he has seen over years the amount of quality players, managers, etc. that we've had at our football club, and we haven't been successful. And I feel like he has looked at that, and he, then put all the eggs in the basket of winning the Europa League, because that kills two birds with one stone. Not only does it put a trophy in the cabinet, all the fans are very happy. The parade, etc., incredible. But it also gave us Champions League football. Many people say, who's had a better season, Spurs or Arsenal? Spurs, in my opinion. You'll get Arsenal fans saying, well, no, we've had a more successful season. Well, how? We're still qualified for the Champions League. I feel like Ange Postecoglou getting us to the Champions League, I felt like he deserved that chance to then manage Spurs in the Champions League. And I'm going to go back again to transfer windows. Spurs have said, we expect to be fighting on all fronts. Now, I'm going to say this very sarcastically, just in case, some people take it the wrong way. Well, if we're going to be fighting on all fronts, this transfer window, I'm really looking forward to it. At the end of this transfer window, I hope that I'm super excited, and I hope that you guys are super excited as well about our transfer window, because if we are going to be fighting on all fronts at the start of next season, then it means that the club are going to be digging deep, and we're going to be not only spending a decent amount of money, but we're going to be bringing in world-class players, and we're going to be bringing in experienced players, and we're going to be building this squad in terms of fighting on all fronts. If I ask you, as the viewers and the listeners, when was the last time that we could fight on all fronts? When was the last time? Because even the likes of Mauricio Pochettino, Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte, they still had to rotate, and they still had to put out weakened teams in cup competitions. So we, in my opinion, have never been at that stage where we can be fighting on all fronts. Ange Postecoglou went strong, and he wanted to go and deliver us a trophy, and he did what was best for the football club, in my opinion. Yes, we finished 17th, and I know everyone will bang on about finishing 17th, 22 league defeats, etc., etc. I believe this summer, had Ange Postecoglou given the chance to have a third season, I believe that he would have really wanted to target experienced players. And that's not only my belief, because, he's come out and said it himself. This window was going to be about experienced players, because last summer was about bringing in top talented players. So I am a little bit gutted that Postecoglou is not going to get a third season. But what I'd say now, football is very black and white. You've just got to move on very, very quickly. And it seems, harsh to the Ange Postecoglou fans. But at the end of the day, I'm not a fan of any one person, one manager, one player. I'm a fan of the football club. So it's about what the football club does next for me, which is really, really important. Do we have a plan in place? That is my question. Do Spurs have a plan? We have sacked Ange Postecoglou. Now, do we have a plan? Is the plan now to get Thomas Frank in as the next Spurs manager? I've been reading some of the comments, and I do read every single comment, by the way. So whatever comments you do put at the end of the YouTube videos, I do read every single one. And thank you so much for all of your support on a lot of these videos, by the way. But do Spurs have a plan? And, some of these comments have been saying, if Thomas Frank is the answer and the future for Spurs, why wasn't he appointed 2 years ago when Ange Postecoglou was appointed? And if he is our number one choice, then why haven't Spurs yet spoke to Brentford 48 hours on from sacking Ange Postecoglou? I know reports are coming out stating that Spurs are close to doing a deal with Marco Silva. Now, Fabrizio Romano has even stated himself that it's basically between Thomas Frank and Marco Silva. Those two are, it seems, number one and number two choice. I believe at the moment that Spurs have been, looking at their options, and they probably do have them two as number one and number two choice. And they're still thinking about it. It's funny because as a fan, we all hope and expect that when you sack a manager, you've got an instant plan in place to get something happening. And, any business who makes a big decision, you'd hope that a plan is in place and the board members, whoever, is in charge of that business, have a plan. And, certainly a big football club. However, when Jose Mourinho was sacked, I, at that time, come out on a podcast and said, don't worry, the club will have a plan in place. Well, we waited 72 days for a manager. This cannot happen this time. We cannot be waiting 72 days for a manager. We waited 2. We can't wait another 70 days, same as before. Now, this first part of the transfer window opened on the 1st of June. It will close on the 10th of June. Now, at the date of recording this, it is now the 8th of June. So this first part of the transfer window, it doesn't look like anything or any activity is happening for Spurs. And although we don't have a manager, it does appear that the coaches are still doing their jobs, the scouts are still doing their jobs, etc. And, the club have made the decision today to activate Ben Davies' contract, keeping him at the football club for another year. I've also seen a lot of comments of people saying, well, I'm glad the manager agreed this. I feel like this is a very modern day football decision where the board, the chairman, the powers that be, they make these decisions. And, Ben Davies will be there at Spurs for the next manager to come along, whether it will be Thomas Frank, Marco Silva, or someone else. But in terms of the transfer window, I get people's frustration. I'm a little bit frustrated myself about it. The fact that when you're looking at Arsenal doing deals, Chelsea are doing deals, and Chelsea are always very quick to do deals, I might add as well. They always have deals lined up even before the window opens. You've got Liverpool doing deals as well. City are doing deals. That top 4 is getting stronger. Spurs finishing 17th. And I go back to that point I made earlier of, we need to be competing on all fronts. We need to get moving then. We need a plan in place and we need to get moving, and we need to be fast on these things. You cannot be waiting around because these players are being snapped up. The top players are being snapped up. And then suddenly you don't get your first choice. You don't get your second choice. You don't even get your third choice. You get the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th choice, etc. And that is an issue. That is a big issue. And it isn't only an issue for the men's first team. I feel like it is an issue for the women's first team as well. Robert Villaham sacked. Many people I've seen online today saying, oh, it's a really good decision. The women didn't have very good results. No, they didn't. They didn't have very good results last season because we needed much bigger investment and a lot more going into the women's first team, in my opinion. Robert Villaham is a great guy, great coach, and I do believe that he would have taken us to the next level for the Spurs women, but sadly he's not going to get that chance either. And I feel like Villaham and Postecoglou, they had very similar Spurs careers, actually. Villaham took us to a FA Cup final for the first time in our history in his first season. Sadly, didn't get over the line. Really, really sad day, but and also a good day for the club to go that far, competing with the top teams. But that was the summer, in my opinion, to kick on again and go really strong in that transfer window. And, Robert Villaham, I've been in many press conferences and interviewed Robert Villaham after games. And he always said to me, the first season, let's see how it goes. And then the second season, I want to be challenging for those Champions League spots. And I said to him during this second season, was that realistic? And he said, the gap is so big, and the gap is absolutely huge in that Women's Super League. So a lot more investment and a lot better players needed to have come into the squad. That didn't happen. And I feel like the same with the men's first team as well. So I feel like the board have actually put a lot of pressure on themselves to be saying we want to be fighting on all fronts. Because if you do want to be fighting on all fronts, whether it be the men's team, the women's team, whatever, you need to have, really good recruitment. You need to be putting in a fair chunk of money. And as I've said on this channel many times, I'm not one of these guys who's just sit here and go, spend the money. Go and spend £100 million on a player, blah, 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 blah. The recruitment needs to be absolutely top notch, and the players that we sign need to be the right decisions. And we need to be on it. We need to be on it from the very off, where it is now the 8th of June. And 8 days into the transfer window, it doesn't look like we're signing any players right now. It'd be interesting to see what happens with the likes of Matisse Tell. Do we now buy this player? Will the next manager want to buy this player, or will this be a club decision as well, whether we buy Matisse Tell? Because it's going to be, will we get him cheaper than what we originally was quoted by Bayern Munich? So all of these decisions are going to be very interesting, in my opinion, how we go forward. Because, I'm sitting here and I'm looking and I'm thinking, we need to go and, go out and buy players like Eze, £68 million release clause. That would be a fantastic signing, in my opinion. There are a lot of players with good Premier League experience out there at the moment, players that have been there, done it, got the T-shirt. But Spurs, let's face it, are a million miles away from the top four. And this is why, when I say about, seeing the bigger picture, would it really have mattered if Ange Postecoglou delivered us a 7th or an 8th or a 9th or a 10th place finish in the Premier League and not win the Europa League? Because I tell you what, the way that Europa League win and that parade, etc., made me feel, I'd take a 17th place finish over a 10th place finish, if it meant it was more respectful. I tell you what, the trophy. I take the trophy every day of the week. And I believe that Ange Postecoglou was very driven on just wanting to put that trophy in the cabinet. And I like that attitude because, like I said, many managers in previous years have always worried about the league position. This year, Ange done things differently. And it's funny, actually, because I did an episode called Spurs in the Media where I looked at all of the back pages from Saturday, of course, the day after Postecoglou was sacked. And all of these journalists are always in the press conferences, either before the games, the day before the game, pre-match press conferences and the post-match press conferences, etc., etc. And a lot of them gave Ange quite a hard time, but these back pages and these articles on Ange on Saturday, they were all very sympathetic, and they all stated that Daniel Levy has made a wrong decision in sacking Ange Postecoglou. And I know, of course, the minority of fans that want Ange Postecoglou to go out the door. I know they'll be sitting there going, "Oh, shut up," or whatever. But the journalists were very sympathetic. I feel like a lot of fans were very sympathetic. And I know a lot of people have said about, is it an emotional decision by a lot of us fans, including me? And the newspapers even picked out, football is an emotional game. It is emotional. But I just felt like Ange Postecoglou knew exactly what he had to do. And he came to Spurs, he dared, and he did. And that is a quote actually from one of the newspapers from Saturday, and I completely agree. He come to Spurs, he dared, and he did, and he delivered. And there's a lot of these cartoon pictures and stuff now coming out. A lot of Arsenal fans and a lot of opposition fans are now taking the mick out of Spurs, saying, "Oh, it's back to Spursy. You won a trophy, and now you got rid of your manager." etc., etc. And, these cartoons of Ange Postecoglou walking past the trophy cabinet with the Europa League trophy. And then you've got these other cartoons of saying, with the door, basically him walking out the door. And then you've got these cartoons of Daniel Levy saying to Ange Postecoglou, you're not meant to do that, mate. You can't win trophies here. It's not what we do. So there's a lot of these sorts of things going around. But I feel like Ange Postecoglou can hold his head up very, very high, having achieved what he did at Spurs. Because, finishing 17th, the negative people in the world will always go on about him finishing 17th, and they will always go on about the 22 league defeats. But, I just want to remind everyone, we did just lift a trophy only a couple of weeks ago. We can still smile about it. We can still celebrate. I feel like a lot of fans have already just swept it all under the carpet and it's all been forgotten about. I don't like that. This has been a long time coming. 17 long years without a trophy, 41 long years without a European trophy. Come on, you can still enjoy it. You can still have a smile on your face. But what's going to happen next? your guess is as good as mine. Thomas Frank, Spurs have apparently spoken to him a number of times. But I would say is that if Thomas Frank is our number one choice, just make it happen and make it happen quick, so we have a plan in place for this transfer window, so we can push the club on, hopefully move forward and back the manager in the transfer window and give this football club exactly what it needs in terms of high quality calibre players to push us up that Premier League table. It's all well and good saying, we need to be fighting on all fronts. The new manager needs the tools to do exactly that. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're watching on YouTube, please do hit the subscribe button, like, share and comment below. And if you're listening to this on an audio platform, please do hit the follow button and leave a review if you can. And I'm also available on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Threads and Blue Sky at Chris Cowlin. So if you'd like to follow me across any of those social media platforms, please do so. Have a great week, everyone, and stay well, and I'll see you on the next one. Come on, you Spurs.
Thank you.